The aroma of star anise and caramelized sugar filled the empty dining room of Golden Dragon as I watched the last of our loyal customers walk away. Across the street, the gaudy neon signs of Modern Dynasty blazed against the twilight sky, its tables packed with diners enjoying dishes that had been in my family for 3 generations. My name is Mei Chen, and 6 months ago, my uncle David Chen betrayed our family in a way that went beyond mere business rivalry. He stole the secret recipes that had made Golden Dragon a San Francisco Chinatown landmark for 60 years. Still refusing to close, I see. Uncle David's voice made me turn. He stood in the doorway, immaculate in his designer suit, looking more like a Texio than a restaurant owner. You're only hurting yourself, niece. Your grandmother would want you to be practical. I kept polishing the antique teapot in my hands, the one Papa had brought from Shanghai in 1962 when she first opened Golden Dragon. Funny how you know what grandmother would want, considering you never spent a day learning from her in this kitchen. He shrugged, adjusting his Rolex. The old ways are dead, May. Modern Dynasty gives people what they want, our family's authentic recipes with contemporary presentation. You can't compete with innovation. Innovation. That's what he called stealing our recipes and adding fancy plating and premium prices. 6 months ago, he'd orchestrated a perfect theft, hired away our head chef with promises of doubled salary, copied our secret recipe book during the chaos of grandmother's funeral, and opened his upscale restaurant just as the tech boom was bringing wealthy new clients to Chinatown. You're right about one thing, I said quietly, setting down the teapot. I can't compete with stolen recipes and lies. But I can expose them. He laughed, the sound echoing through the empty restaurant. Expose what? You have no proof. Chef Lu signed an ironclad NDA. The recipes, they're different enough to be legally distinct. Face it, May, you lost. I watched him leave, his satisfied smirk reflected in the darkened windows. What he didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. And that moment was coming in exactly 1 week. The San Francisco Culinary Excellence Competition was the most prestigious food event on the West Coast. This year's theme was Heritage and Innovation, celebrating traditional family recipes and modern interpretations. Uncle David had already been bragging about entering Modern Dynasty's innovative take on our grandmother's signature dishes. What he didn't know was that I had also entered Golden Dragon, with a plan that would expose his theft to the entire culinary world. May. A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. Jenny Lu, our former chef's 16-year-old daughter, stood in the kitchen doorway. I finished my homework. Can we start? I smiled, remembering myself at her age learning at my grandmother's side. After Chef Lu left us for Modern Dynasty, Jenny had begged me to teach her the traditional cooking techniques her father had abandoned in favor of modern fusion. Get your apron, I told her, heading to the kitchen. Today we're making your grandmother's red braised pork. Yes, her grandmother, because what Uncle David didn't know was that our head chef's mother had worked alongside my grandmother for 30 years. The recipes he thought he'd stolen were incomplete. The real secrets, the techniques that made our food special, had never been written down. They were passed down through practice, through the kind of patience that modern kitchens had forgotten. As I watched Jenny carefully controlling the flame under the wok, I remembered my own training. Too hot, I said gently, the sugar will burn. Watch the color, like autumn leaves turning golden. She adjusted the heat perfectly, her face showing the same concentration I used to see in her father's eyes, before ambition had drawn him away from tradition. My phone buzzed, a message from Maria Santos, the food critic who'd made Modern Dynasty famous. Got your evidence. It's better than we hoped. Are you sure you want to wait for the competition? The timing has to be perfect, I typed back. For 6 months, I'd been building a network of allies, food critics, former employees, suppliers who'd watched Uncle David's betrayal with disapproval. Each had a piece of evidence, waiting to be revealed at exactly the right moment. Jenny's voice brought me back to the present. The colors changing. I watched as the sauce transformed, becoming the exact shade of amber that had made this dish famous. Now add the star anise, but remember toast it first, just until fragrant, she finished. I remember Papa showing my father. Before greed and promises of fame had torn our kitchen family apart. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Each morning I opened Golden Dragon despite the empty tables. Each afternoon I trained Jenny in the techniques her father had forgotten. And each night I refined my plan. The competition would feature 3 rounds: traditional technique, modern innovation, and heritage revival. Uncle David had entered modern dynasty in all 3, confident that his stolen recipes and fancy plating would impress the judges. But there was one dish he didn't have, my grandmother's most famous creation, the one recipe that had never been written down. She had taught it only to me in the year before she passed, making me promise to share it only with someone who understood that food was about more than profit. Miss Chen. Mr. Wong, our elderly regular who'd been coming to Golden Dragon for 40 years, peered through the window. "Are you serving today?" I hurried to let him in. "Always for you, Mr. Wong." "The usual." He settled at his regular table, the one by the window where he could watch the street life of Chinatown. "Your uncle's place is busy," he observed, nodding toward modern dynasty. "For now," I said, preparing his jasmine tea the traditional way. "Ah, but they don't make it like this," he smiled, inhaling the fragrant steam. "They use tea bags now. Modern efficiency they call it. But efficiency isn't the same as excellence, is it?" I thought about the competition, about Uncle David's belief that innovation meant abandoning tradition rather than building upon it. "No, it isn't." That night after closing I found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a USB drive and a note from Chef Lu. "I was wrong. What your uncle's doing, it's not innovation, it's theft. Here's proof of how he got the recipes. Use it well." I plugged the drive into my laptop, watching security footage of Uncle David in our kitchen during grandmother's funeral, hastily photographing our recipe book while everyone was at the service. My hands shook with anger but also satisfaction. Another piece of evidence, ready for the perfect moment. The next morning, a food blogger's review of Modern Dynasty went viral. While the presentation is undeniably modern, these flavors are hauntingly familiar to anyone who remembers the glory days of Golden Dragon. One has to wonder about the authenticity of claims that these are original creations. Uncle David stormed into Golden Dragon an hour later. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Spreading rumors? Trying to damage my reputation?" I continued preparing for the day, measuring rice with the same careful precision Papa had taught me. "The truth isn't a rumor, Uncle. It has a way of revealing itself. Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice low and threatening. "If you try anything at the competition, if you say one word about where these recipes came from, I'll bury this place. One health code complaint, one tax audit, that's all it would take." I met his gaze steadily. "Grandmother always said that good food tells its own story. On Tuesday we'll see what story your food tells." After he left, Jenny emerged from the kitchen where she'd been hiding. "He's scared," she said thoughtfully. "I've never seen him scared before." "Fear makes people dangerous," I replied, remembering how my grandmother had handled betrayal in her own time. "But it also makes them careless." The weekend before the competition, I invited all our old regular customers for a special dinner. The dining room was full for the first time in months, filled with people who remembered when Golden Dragon was the heart of Chinatown's culinary scene. "Tomorrow," I announced, "Modern Dynasty will try to claim our heritage as their innovation. But tonight we remember the true meaning of family recipes." I served them dishes exactly as my grandmother had taught me, watching as each bite brought back memories. Mr. Wong cried when he tasted the red braised pork. "Just like the old days," he whispered. What no one knew was that each person in that room would play a part in Tuesday's revelation. Each had a story to tell, a memory to share, a truth to reveal. As I closed up that night, I looked across at Modern Dynasty's gleaming facade. Uncle David had built his success on stolen recipes and broken trust. But he'd forgotten the most important ingredient in any family recipe: the legacy of those who taught us. Tuesday was coming. And with it, a lesson about the true cost of betrayal. The morning of the San Francisco Culinary Excellence Competition dawned with a fog that shrouded Chinatown in mystery. I arrived at the prestigious Ferry Building venue early, watching the other contestants set up their stations. Uncle David was already there, directing his team from Modern Dynasty with theatrical flourishes. "Mei." Chef Lu approached hesitantly, his Modern Dynasty chef's coat pristine white. "I need to tell you something. Your uncle, He's planning to serve your grandmother's secret 8-treasure duck today. He claims he rediscovered the recipe. My hands stilled on my prep work. 8-treasure duck, Popo's masterpiece that had never been written down, the dish she'd only taught me in her final year. That's impossible. He's been obsessed with recreating it for months, Chef Lu continued, guilt heavy in his voice. But something's always missing. He's offering a huge bonus to anyone who can figure it out before the final round. I smiled slightly, remembering Popo's words. The secret isn't in the ingredients, it's in the intention. Cook with honor and the flavors will reveal themselves. The competition began with the traditional technique round. Each restaurant had to prepare a classic dish that showcased their heritage. I watched as Modern Dynasty presented their version of red braised pork, beautiful plating, perfect garnishes, but something was off in the color. When it was Golden Dragon's turn, I brought out our version, prepared exactly as it had been for 60 years. The judges took their first bites in silence. This taste, one judge said slowly, it reminds me of meals I had in Shanghai as a child. How do you achieve this depth? Before I could answer, Uncle David interrupted. Our Modern Dynasty version uses the same traditional techniques, but with an innovative twist dash. Actually, Jenny's voice rang out clearly as she stepped forward in her golden dragon apron. This is my grandmother's technique. The one she taught alongside Mei's grandmother for 30 years. The one my father used to use before. The judges looked between Jenny and Chef Lu, who couldn't meet his daughter's eyes. The modern innovation round was next. Uncle David presented a deconstructed version of our classic soup dumplings, complete with molecular gastronomy flourishes. The judges praised its creativity, though several noted it lost something of the original's soul. For Golden Dragon's entry, I presented a dish that honored tradition while embracing the future, a collaboration between Jenny and me that took Popo's techniques and applied them to sustainable local ingredients. The flavors were familiar but fresh, innovative without betraying their roots. This, the head judge declared, is how tradition evolves without losing its essence. But it was the final heritage revival round that would change everything. As expected, Uncle David announced he would present his interpretation of the legendary 8-treasure duck. I watched him prepare it, noting every mistake. The temperature too high, the timing rushed, the aromatics added in the wrong order. He was working from a recipe without understanding the philosophy behind it. When it was my turn, I didn't go to my cooking station. Instead, I walked to the center of the judging area. Before I present my dish, I announced, I want to tell you a story about family recipes, about legacy, and about truth. The room fell silent. Uncle David's face darkened. 6 months ago, during my grandmother's funeral, these recipes were stolen. I nodded to Maria Santos, who began displaying photographs on the event's main screen. The security footage, copies of the original recipe book, testimonials from suppliers and former staff. But what the thief didn't understand was that the true recipes were never just about ingredients and instructions. They were about honor, tradition, and the wisdom passed down through generations. Chef Lu stepped forward, removing his Modern Dynasty coat. Everything she's saying is true. I helped steal these recipes, betrayed the family that had taught me everything. But the most important lessons, the real secrets, those can't be stolen. They have to be earned. Jenny joined me at the cooking station, and together we began preparing Popo's 8-treasure duck. As we cooked, I told the story of each technique, each ingredient, each secret that had been passed down. The judges watched, mesmerized, as the dish came together in a way that was both familiar and revelatory. The real innovation, I explained, isn't in changing everything to seem new. It's in understanding your foundations so deeply that you can build upon them with respect and wisdom. When we presented the finished dish, the difference was undeniable. Where Uncle David's version was a shallow imitation, ours told the story of 3 generations of Chinese culinary artistry. The judges' decision was unanimous. Golden Dragon won not just the competition, but special recognition for preserving and advancing cultural culinary heritage. But the victory wasn't just about winning a competition. As I stood accepting the award, I saw the change rippling through the audience. Restaurant owners who'd been considering hiring Uncle David's staff backed away. Food critics who'd praised Modern Dynasty's innovations began revising their reviews. This isn't over, Uncle David hissed as he pushed past me toward the exit. The customers don't care about tradition. They want modern, exciting dash. Actually, Maria Santos interrupted, her food critics badge prominent. They care about authenticity. And tomorrow's headlines will tell them exactly where to find it. The next few weeks transformed Chinatown's culinary landscape. Modern Dynasty's customers dwindled as the truth spread. Chef Lu returned to Golden Dragon, not as head chef but as a student, relearning the traditions he'd forgotten. Jenny continued her training, bridging the gap between old and new. We renovated Golden Dragon, but thoughtfully, preserving its soul while updating its comfort. The lines started forming again, not just for the food but for the stories behind each dish. One evening, as the dining room hummed with happy customers, I found Jenny staring at a photograph of our grandmothers together in the old kitchen. "Do you think they knew," she asked, "that we'd be here carrying on their legacy?" I touched Popo's old teapot, now displayed proudly in a place of honor. They knew that true recipes are about more than food. They're about family, honor, and the courage to protect what matters. A year later, Golden Dragon was named one of San Francisco's essential restaurants, praised for preserving traditional techniques while thoughtfully embracing change. Uncle David sold Modern Dynasty to a hotel chain and left the city, but his departure barely made news. The real story was about revival, how a new generation was learning to value its heritage while building its future. Jenny enrolled in culinary school while continuing her apprenticeship with us. Chef Lu found his passion for teaching again, running classes for young cooks eager to learn traditional techniques. As for me, I finally understood what Papa meant when she said that recipes are like family stories. They only survive when they're passed down with love and respect. Every morning before we open, Jenny and I make tea in Popo's old pot, honoring the past while planning for the future. Last week, a young chef from another family restaurant asked me how we maintain our traditions in a changing world. I showed her the wall where we now display photos of every cook who's trained in our kitchen, alongside the original picture of our grandmothers. The secret, I told her, isn't in protecting the recipes. It's in protecting their meaning. Innovation without respect is just imitation, but tradition without growth is just history. The real art is in finding the balance. She nodded, understanding. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for, "Will you teach me?" And just like that, another story began, another branch of the family tree extended. Because in the end, that's what Papa had really been protecting, not just recipes, but the wisdom to know that our greatest legacy isn't in the dishes we create, but in the knowledge we choose to share and the people we choose to share it with. Every evening as the sunset turns Chinatown's streets golden, I can almost hear Popo's voice in the rhythm of our kitchen, in the sizzle of the wok and the chorus of "Yes, Chef" from our trainees. The recipes are safe now not because they're secret but because they're being passed down the way they were meant to be, with honor, with wisdom, and with love. And that, even more than winning or revenge, is the sweetest victory of all.